I always wanted to write for children, but it never occurred to me as a child that I would ever be famous. I had two brothers who were younger than I was, and I used to tell them stories, which I enjoyed very much indeed. And I suppose possibly it was from that beginning that the idea first came to me. I would like to write stories when I was able to. As I grew older and went to school, of course, the interest of the lessons and playing with other children rather took my mind away from any thought of the future. But my father always wanted me to be a musician. Music is in my family. I had a very clever aunt and who used to give concerts and things like that, and my father rather visualized that I would do the same. Well, therefore, at 6 years old, I had to begin to learn to play the piano. And all through my childhood, there was practice, 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 till I was in my teens, when I was doing 4 hours a day. Now, if you have to work at something that you have really no desire to achieve anything great in, it becomes a terrible bore. And all the time, I still wanted to write. Not necessarily all the time did I want to write for children, but I wanted to write. And that was the only thing that I was really any good at in my schoolwork, I think, writing, essay writing, story writing. Well, then it happened that I went to stay with a friend of mine in the country, on a farm. I suppose I was about 17 then, 16 or 17. And this friend ran a Sunday school. And she said to me, would you like to come with me to Sunday school? I said, what would I do? She said, well, perhaps you could tell the children stories. I said, Bible stories? She said, yes. I said, yes, I'd love to do that. So off I went to Sunday school. And I don't think I've ever been so happy in my life as I was that afternoon telling stories to these small children. I knew that I ought to be a children's writer more than anything else. But I also knew I didn't know nearly enough about children to be able to put over things like good morals, education, information of all sorts, and so on. So I decided that I would run my own school. I ran it for 4 or 5 years, and in that time I wrote absolutely everything for the children. All the stories, all the songs. There my music came in useful because I could put them to tunes. All the songs, all the poetry they learnt. That doesn't mean I didn't teach them classical poetry that was up their street, because I did. But I wanted to try my own gift out on them. And it was the happiest 5 years there, I think, that I could ever wish for. Then I left the school, my little school, and I started writing in earnest. Of course, later on I married. I had children of my own for practice on. But that was the beginning of how I wanted to write for children and how I managed to get my wish.